On Halloween night, October 31st, 2020, the small town of Hemphill, Texas, experienced a tragedy that left the community reeling. The night, which should have been filled with celebration, turned into one marked by violence and death. Livye Lewis, a 19-year-old with dreams of becoming a physician assistant, was found dead in her car on a remote road. What started as a festive gathering with friends ended with a shocking murder, and her ex-boyfriend, Edgar, became the prime suspect. Hemphill, a close-knit town where everyone knows each other, had never experienced a crime of this magnitude. News of Livye's death spread quickly, leaving residents stunned and heartbroken. Many couldn't believe that someone they knew, a young man from their community, could be responsible for such a heinous act. Over the following days, the town grappled with questions. What led to this tragedy? How could a joyful Halloween celebration take such a dark turn? The answers would come slowly as investigators pieced together the events of that night. This is a story not just about a tragic loss of life, but also about betrayal, justice, and a family's relentless pursuit of the truth in the face of unimaginable grief. The night began like any other festive gathering, with friends coming together to celebrate Halloween. Bobby Ozin, a close friend of Livye Lewis, hosted the pre-Halloween party at his home. Among the attendees were Livye's ex-boyfriend, Edgar, and his ex-wife, Montana Bockel. Witnesses described the atmosphere as light-hearted and fun until Edgar's arrival. Edgar, who had recently broken up with Livye, grew increasingly agitated upon seeing her enjoy the night with friends. His behavior became erratic, culminating in an outburst when he overheard Livye discussing plans to stay at Ozin's house that night. Montana Bockel recalled Edgar's violent reaction. In a fit of rage, he began attacking her car, kicking the doors and punching the windows. Fearing for their safety, Bockel and Livye decided to leave the party separately. While Bockel headed to Edgar's grandparents' house for refuge, Livye drove off alone, unaware that danger was following closely behind. At around 5:15 a.m. on November 1st, 2020, a passerby noticed a car parked on the side of a remote road. Something about the scene didn't seem right. The car was parked at an odd angle, and there appeared to be someone inside. Concerned, the passerby decided to stop and check if the driver needed help. What they found was far more disturbing than they could have imagined. Inside the car was Livye Lewis, slumped over in the driver's seat. She was unresponsive and bleeding from a gunshot wound to her neck. The passerby immediately called 911, reporting what they believed to be a fatal accident or possibly a violent crime. First responders arrived quickly, but it was too late. Livye was pronounced dead at the scene. Not far from the car, officers found Edgar lying on the ground in a fetal position. He was conscious but appeared disoriented and was covered in blood. When questioned, Edgar claimed he had no memory of what had happened. He repeatedly told officers that he had been drinking heavily and couldn't recall anything after falling asleep on his porch the night before. The scene was chaotic, with officers working to secure the area while investigators began collecting evidence. Among the items found was a rifle lying in the grass nearby. This rifle would later become a critical piece of evidence, as ballistic analysis confirmed it was the weapon used to kill Livye. Investigators also noted the position of the vehicles. Livye's car was parked in front, while a truck believed to belong to Edgar's cousin was parked behind it. This arrangement suggested that Livye may have been forced to stop or was blocked from leaving the scene. News of the discovery spread rapidly throughout Hemphill. For many residents, the idea that such a violent crime could occur in their peaceful town was almost unimaginable. Livye's friends and family were devastated, struggling to comprehend how a night meant for fun and celebration had ended in such tragedy. As the investigation continued, the community braced itself for the difficult truths that would soon emerge. When first responders arrived at the scene, they discovered Matthew Edgar lying on the ground, appearing disoriented and covered in blood. Despite being in close proximity to Livye's lifeless body, Edgar claimed he had no memory of what had happened. He stated that he had consumed a large quantity of alcohol, including an entire bottle of whiskey, and the last thing he remembered was falling asleep on his porch. Investigators began processing the scene, collecting evidence that would later prove crucial in the case. A rifle was found in the grass near the vehicles. Ballistics later confirmed that this rifle was the weapon used to fire the fatal shot that killed Livye. Additionally, the truck parked behind Livye's car was traced back to Edgar's cousin, further tying him to the scene. Forensic analysis indicated that Livye had likely pulled over to talk to Edgar. Sabine County Sheriff's investigator J.P. McDonough noted that Livye's body position suggested she had not been in immediate fear for her life. She was sitting with her legs crossed, McDonough told reporters, which indicates that she was somewhat comfortable with whoever she was talking to. The trial of Matthew Edgar began in early 2022, drawing significant media attention. The prosecution presented a strong case, backed by forensic evidence, eyewitness testimonies, and the text messages exchanged between Edgar and his ex-wife, Montana Bockel. These messages, sent just hours before Livye was found dead, painted a picture of a man driven by jealousy and rage. One of the most critical pieces of evidence was the rifle found at the scene. Ballistic experts testified that the bullet that killed Livye matched the rifle's barrel markings, leaving no doubt that it was the murder weapon. Additionally, forensic analysis of Edgar's clothing revealed traces of gunshot residue, further implicating him in the crime. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, Edgar's defense team attempted to create doubt by arguing that there was no direct witness to the shooting. They claimed that Edgar's memory loss, caused by heavy alcohol consumption, made it impossible for him to provide a coherent account of what happened. However, the prosecution countered by emphasizing Edgar's actions before and after the incident, pointing out that his behavior indicated a clear attempt to evade responsibility. In a dramatic turn of events, Edgar fled before the trial could conclude, prompting a massive manhunt. His disappearance added another layer of tension to an already emotional case. For weeks, law enforcement agencies searched tirelessly, issuing public alerts and seeking assistance from nearby communities. The manhunt ended when Edgar was finally captured and returned to custody. With Edgar back in court, the trial resumed. The jury deliberated for several hours before reaching a unanimous verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. Edgar was sentenced to 99 years in prison, a sentence that brought a sense of closure to Livye's family, but could never erase the pain of their loss. Following the verdict, Livye's mother, Darcy Bass, spoke to reporters, expressing her mixed emotions. "We're relieved that justice has been served, but nothing can bring Livye back. She was a beautiful soul taken from us far too soon." Her words echoed the sentiments of a grieving community still trying to heal from the tragedy. The courtroom was packed on the day the jury returned with its verdict. Friends, family, and local residents gathered, hoping for justice to be served. The prosecution's closing arguments had been powerful, painting a clear picture of a man driven by jealousy and rage. They reminded the jury of the overwhelming evidence, the rifle, the text messages, and Edgar's erratic behavior on the night of the murder. When the guilty verdict was announced, there was an audible sigh of relief from Livye's family. Justice had been served, but the emotional wounds inflicted by her loss would take much longer to heal. Edgar's sentence of 99 years in prison ensured that he would never again pose a threat to anyone else. In interviews following the trial, jurors expressed their belief that the evidence presented left no room for doubt. "It was a difficult case emotionally," one juror said, "but in the end, the facts were clear. He was guilty." The tragic death of Livye Lewis, and the subsequent trial of Matthew Edgar left a lasting impact on the small community of Hemphill. Livye's family, particularly her mother, Darcy Bass, became vocal advocates for justice, attending every court hearing and rallying community support throughout the trial. Darcy's anguish was evident when she arrived at the crime scene shortly after Livye's body was discovered. Police body cam footage captured her desperate pleas for information about her daughter's condition. Her grief turned to determination as she fought to ensure Edgar would face the full force of the law. In the aftermath of the case, local residents expressed their shock and sorrow over the loss of such a bright young life. She had so much potential, one of Livye's former teachers recalled. It's heartbreaking to think about what she could have achieved. For Livye's family, the days and weeks following her death were filled with unimaginable grief. Her mother, Darcy Bass, who had always been close to Livye, described the experience as a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. "She was my baby," Darcy said in an emotional interview. "She had so many dreams, so much potential. To lose her like this, in such a senseless act of violence, is something no parent should ever have to go through." Livye's friends also struggled to come to terms with her loss. Many of them had been at the same party just hours before the tragedy occurred. They recalled Livye as a bright and joyful person, someone who always had a smile on her face and was quick to help those in need. In the aftermath of her death, they organized vigils and memorials to honor her memory, lighting candles and sharing stories about the impact she had on their lives. The emotional toll extended beyond Livye's immediate circle. The entire town of Hemphill felt the weight of the tragedy as the case continued to dominate local conversations and media coverage. Schools in the area provided counseling services for students affected by the news, and community leaders called for increased awareness about domestic violence and mental health support. In the wake of Livye's murder, the community of Hemphill rallied together to support her family and advocate for change. Local organizations began hosting events to raise awareness about domestic violence, emphasizing the importance of recognizing warning signs and seeking help before conflicts escalate. Darcy Bass became an outspoken advocate, using her platform to educate others about the dangers of abusive relationships. She partnered with local nonprofits to launch a campaign aimed at preventing similar tragedies in the future. If sharing Livye's story can save even one life, then her death won't be in vain, she said during a public event. Law enforcement agencies in the area also took steps to improve their response to domestic violence cases. Training programs were introduced to help officers better handle situations involving potential abuse, and resources for victims were expanded to ensure they had access to the support they needed. The story of Livye Lewis is one that will not be forgotten. It is a reminder of the fragility of life and the devastating consequences of unchecked anger and jealousy. For those who knew and loved Livye, the pain of her loss will always be present. But through their grief, they have found a way to honor her memory by turning tragedy into a call for change. As time passes, the community of Hemphill continues to heal, holding on to the lessons learned from this heartbreaking case. Livye's legacy lives on in the hearts of those she touched, and her story serves as a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable loss.